This is Jordan Edwards, and this is the Business Jiu-Jitsu Podcast.
Welcome back. By true popular demand, Glenn Poppy Edwards, my dad, my business partner and mentor, third appearance on the Business Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. Just off air, Dad asked me, how do you know if anybody even listens to these things? And the overwhelming response that I've gotten from our last episode especially was very, very positive. And it was in recent memory, just a couple of months ago, but people loved hearing from you in our business network, our friends, family, and especially at our companies. We had a lot of people reach out and they enjoyed the conversation.
Time goes by so incredibly fast, but I think it was like 3 months ago probably. And the amount of things that have happened in 3 months in our business, in the world, in politics, in the economy, it feels like it's packed in 10 years worth. And in 3 months, so much, including going through a new year. And then already it's almost March. Go figure.
Yeah. Crazy.
It's
It really
crazy.
is. It's wild.
Hard to get your arms around it, but the one thing that my friends and I say down here is that every day is a blessing. We really, truly appreciate every single day because they do go by so fast.
Down here, you mean in Florida? You're in Florida.
Yeah, well, I think it goes by fast everywhere. Although you have shorter days in New York in the winter than we have over here, they are short days, but it's a gift. Every day is a gift, and there's so much going on, and it's not always pleasant. For instance, today in our business, we live in a crazy world, and we got approved for one tenant in Texas for a tobacco shop, and it's probably going to do very well. It's in a very busy shopping center. We have 2 bars in that shopping center. We have a bingo parlor in that shopping center. I think the tobacco place is a good fit for what we have over there. We also have what they call, I think it's called a pawn shop, but they don't call it a pawn shop. And I don't mean PORN, I mean PAWN. But it's really not. For those stores they're much more than a pawn shop today. They're real resellers of furniture and things. But anyway, and then in North Carolina, in one of our shopping centers where we have $2 stores, a pharmacy, hair cutter, jiu-jitsu tenant. The town shut us down on putting in a tobacco shop today. So we had a new tenant that was supposed to come in, 2 tobacco shops. It's typical of retail real estate today in these small markets that you get vape shops and tobacco shops because people go out and buy those things. So it's like a nail salon. It's a service business. It's not something you necessarily buy on the web or it's a staple that you get from Amazon. So the tenants in these shopping centers are changing, but the politics are so peculiar from one state to the next, from one county to the next, from one city to the next.
Yeah.
And don't even get me started on New York City, but really crazy in one day to get approved and disapproved for the exact same use.
Yeah. Well, I was having that conversation with a friend of mine who is an immigrant, skilled worker, highly educated, master's level, extremely intelligent. And we were discussing the politics of the day, as we do. And we were talking that you want to get the right people in and keep the wrong people out. And sometimes, the right people just can be anywhere on the spectrum of, it could be farmers, it could be tradesmen, it could be scientists, doctors, it's whatever. Just get the good people in, and then criminals who commit crimes and sell drugs and murder people, they should not get here and they should get kicked out as soon as possible. So that was our consensus. He's probably left of center, I'm right of center. But we had a really nice conversation and debate about it. But as an American green card holder, not as a full citizen, I said to him, is there any place that you would go rather than the US? Or do you still believe that America is the best place to settle your life? And he said unequivocally, America is the best place, the only place that he wants to be. He comes from an Asian country. And we were talking about that. And one of the benefits of this country that I told him is a superpower is from your great philosophy that you passed to me of Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, and people's ability to leave as a protest vote. And I think that's one of our superpowers in this country is that we have these states, and states can be run completely differently. And if New York begins to run terrible policies, there will be an exodus. And you are seeing a mass exodus from New York, California, and other poorly run states, Chicago, and they're moving to places like you, Florida, North Carolina, Texas. And I think that that's one of our superpowers, because as you and I have seen around the country, sometimes you want to do the exact same thing in a different place, whether it's a simple build out, 100, 200 square foot office space, or change the facade or put up a sign, and you get a 9-month roadblock from putting a sign on the front of your building. I mean, what is that all about?
Right.
Different state, and they roll out the red carpet and they say, come on into our development office. You know, what services and resources can we give you to help make this process easier? And, you know, in New York City, it's almost impossible to open a barbershop. I think that's, you know, the one that they want.
So New York City has had its ebbs and flows over the last, I'll call it 125 years, since 1900, since pre-World War I, before the Depression, before the stock market crash in 1929, which I just read the book 1929 by Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Oh, how was that?
It was a great book for me. I don't know if everybody will love it on this podcast, but if you want to know who the players were of the day, it's great. It's also, you'll see true corruption in the banking system and how they tried to correct it in that moment in time. But what was corruption back then was not illegal. It was just corruption because there were no laws or rules. And that's where the rules that we live with today came out of the market crash. But that was my point. My point is that New York City has been probably one of the best cities in the world to live in over the last 125 years, since 1900. California, since its emergence as a state that's bigger than most countries, is
almost every country.
It's the most amazing place to live. It has the biggest economy, probably one of the biggest economies in the world as a state alone, against compared to other places. And yet it's not the natural environments that are a problem. It's the people that run them that are a problem. And the grasp for power and the grasp to have influence to change people's lives and make them live a certain way. And as you said, you could vote with your feet, you can move, but isn't it a shame if you'd have to leave the greatest place? New York and New York City is the best place in the world to live. California is the best place to live and raise a family and have recreation and build a business. And they've killed both places. From my opinion. I mean, I'm sure there are
I think most people would agree. And listen, we love Texas. You and I go to Texas. We do a lot of business in Texas. I think you'd be hard pressed to make the argument that West Texas holds a candle to the coast of California. I mean, I think you would be making a pretty difficult argument if you tried to say that El Paso and San Diego could compete against each other in terms of amenities, quality of life, beaches. Right. But more and more people are abandoning California in droves for Texas, places like Austin and San Antonio. And
that's what I'm saying. I think it's crazy because, why would you want to leave somewhere that's so fabulous? Well, the answers are becoming very obvious to people. And politics has too much to do with it, not a little to do with it, as way too much to do with it, and mismanagement of state assets and taxes. So I think your podcast is a great place to free flow and share ideas. And they probably relate back to your premise of what business jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu is all about. The discipline of doing the right things over and over again and trying to be a better person and caring more about community. And I don't see that happening in our government in New York and California, but especially New York, where I care and love the state so much.
Yeah.
It's not terribly interesting to say that things are bad in some places, but I think it's better to say it out loud than subconsciously or not communicate it, because how things are changing get better if you don't talk about it. And it's the same thing in our business. We talk about our problems, right? Don't we say problems are opportunities?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I wish we had opportunity people in our government that wanted to solve things, as opposed to over-regulating and making things worse. Whatever. I'm sorry. It's a tangent. I'm sorry to go off that way, but
yeah. No, listen. We just where you want to go. It's you and I are not terribly political in terms of political activism or getting involved in politics or making a loud stick about politics, but we're business people. We have to live with the decisions of the.
I never had the time to protest. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They might have called me.
Something done. Give it to the busy person.
They might have called me to go downtown or to go to.
One of the things I hope it's hard to argue this against politics. It just becomes a matter of your closely held beliefs, but energy is what keeps the global economy turning. Your phone on, your lights on, your TV on, your car going, food on the table. And some people don't equate that, they walk into a grocery store, their Whole Foods, their Trader Joe's, and how closely tied that is to the production of energy and specifically drilling for oil, because that's where most of the economy runs on. And it's one thing to say, like, Al Gore and some of these people have said, solar and wind and all these programs, but a very, very, very small fraction of that, all of the countless billions that have been spent effectively or wisely. Not to say they haven't tried. And I don't know necessarily that when they spin up these ideas, that they have the best intentions. That's at least what I want to believe in my heart. But the simple fact is that if the cost of energy doubles, triples, or quadruples, the average person hurts. And that drives so much of politics, but not politics around the dinner table traditionally. It's just how you and I have to live as business people, because we actually have to produce profit and margin. And if the price of oil goes up by 4 times, it cuts deeply into our margins. And then conversely, when the price of energy goes down and interest rates come down and the price of eggs come down and the price of clothing comes down and the price of lumber comes down, we see the future. The other way too, where you have these incredible economic tailwinds that are coming your way, God willing. And, I wish that wasn't a political statement sometimes, but this also became a topic of conversation with my friend who's a little bit on the other side of it. And, if you have politicians that make good economic decisions, then you will have good tailwind downstream. If they make terrible economic decisions that have only short-term benefits, they quickly bring down the price of oil, but then it skyrockets because of a bad decision. Then you have, unrest, and people's bank accounts are lower and interest rates rise and all the things that happen. So I wonder how you think about the division of those two things.
So this really is like a family dinner table conversation. We should be having this podcast sitting around the dinner table, because this is the kind of stuff that we do talk about at home. And you see people suffering in the community. You even see people getting shot in Minnesota. whatever side of the aisle you're on that argument. You know, I'm not going to give you an opinion on that today, although I do have an opinion on it. But these are the kind of things that people talk about when they're sitting around with their families. And there are big issues, big things going on in our lives and in our country. And I think you and I take a very common sense, practical approach to both business and the way we run our lives. And it's a balance sheet. You must take in a little more than you spend. You can't spend more than you earn and be sustainable on a long-term basis.
Mhm.
And we see that happening throughout government. And that's why it's a dinner table issue. And you hope that you elect people that somewhat align with your beliefs, but you really hope mostly that they have common sense and that they are looking out for the better of mankind. And I just don't see it happening right now. It's really a little bit depressing because for the most part, I'm pretty optimistic on the economy. I love what you're doing with AI and Palantir. I think you're taking our company and in a very early stage to a place that we're going to be competitive. And I think those that don't will be left behind. Reminds me of a story with Grandpa and me back in the late 80s, early 90s, when in our healthcare business, the whole healthcare system was changing. And so before the 90s, before late 80s, healthcare was basically you ordered the service and you got it paid for, and and doctors and hospitals were paid for everything they did. And then the insurance companies came in. It was mostly prompted by the government to try to rein in costs, and they started slashing reimbursement to providers, doctors, hospitals, home healthcare agencies, and the whole home healthcare industry, which I was part of, started to consolidate. And then they started regulating it. There were very few regulations in our industry, even though we gave great service, very few regulations. The more regulations that came, the worse the service got, ironically, because you're putting more money into regulations than into people. And Grandpa said, they can't do that. That doesn't make any sense. I said, Dad, it's happening. Believe me. I'm the president of the New York State Association of Healthcare Providers. Believe me, I know what's happening. He didn't go to any meetings. He didn't listen. He was just an old-time businessman who made a little bit more every year in business. And I said, it's changing radically. And he didn't want to change with it. And I said, if we don't change, we're going to die. Our business will be gone.
Mhm.
And then between 1995 and 2001, we bought 14 companies that couldn't make it, that didn't want to change. They didn't want to evolve. We implemented all kinds of, we embraced technology. We embraced software programs that helped us grow our capacity so we could drive down the cost, because you had to drive down the cost to provide services. And skipping right ahead to you right now, and what you believe in with all your heart and your time and your hours and your passion is that if we don't change, if we don't embrace the best policies, we will die. And you're throwing it all into Palantir and all into AI. And I'm so proud of you for that. But how many companies in our country are going to say, that's nonsense, you don't have to change, we can continue doing it the same way? And so I see phenomenal opportunity, but I see a tremendous amount of pressure on companies that will suffer, that don't change. It's happening all over again.
Yeah. I think
And
it's like,
I adjusted, and now you're adjusting. So we have that in common.
yeah, well, we've had to adjust a few different times. When we started Mixology Clothing Company, we had 3 software platforms that ran the whole business: the point of sale / ERP, Run It, the finance, QuickBooks, and ADP, and that was it, payroll. And that was in my business lifetime, which doesn't seem that long, just a little bit less than 20 years. And in that stretch of time, we went from 3 softwares running the business to more than 60. And every time I encountered a business problem, I found a software to do it, whether it was for marketing or, image creation, influencer marketing, whatever it was, there's always a software for it. and then right when you think you've got it all figured out, AI pops up its head and then says, nope, you got to do everything differently again. And so, but everything that we learned and built is, you can take it off into the next thing. It's just that you have to break through. And what I found most, I guess it's not surprising. It's just interesting. Now I'm able to give the advice because I've been through it before, but because AI is moving at such a quick pace, I think almost everybody recognizes that if you do not get on board fast, you will be an absolute dinosaur.
Well, because I had that experience early in my career, I'm really ready for change always, because I realize if you don't change, you're absolutely going to be one of the blockbusters of the world. You'll be out of business.
In this case, what I've really tried to focus on for myself and what lessons I've learned from my career is that sometimes I've been way too far ahead of the curve, and I missed the opportunity by the virtue of I got there first, but I didn't catch it. As Warren Buffett says, you want to catch the falling knife on the handle, and sometimes I've caught the knife on the knife blade. We were one of Shopify's first 200 Shopify plus customers. I would have liked our e-commerce business to be many, many, many hundreds of times the size that it is now. It's still a relatively small business. Just because I was there first didn't mean that I was able to seize the opportunity and make it into a unicorn. But now in this new AI paradigm, I've been thinking deeply about, that I'm here. We got the distinction. It's not an official distinction, but they told me that we were the first family fashion business in the world to onboard to Palantir. There are many fashion businesses that are many times our size, publicly traded companies, enterprise, the best of the best retailers in the world. I just learned today that 36% of Palantir's revenues come from the retail sector.
Wow.
That's the entire retail sector, which includes things like transportation of food and logistics. It could be I don't know if it is exactly, but it could be the target.
Right. Yeah.
So, but in terms of small retailers, we are in an extremely tight cohort and growing. And I remember when I was in that extremely tight cohort on Shopify, because like I said, we were one of Shopify's first 20,000 total customers and the first 200 enterprise customers on their Shopify Plus platform. And so I knew to be there. I knew we had to do it. I knew I had to work really hard to get there, but I didn't fully seize the opportunity. Now, at that time, I was 26. Now I'm 40. Right. So I've been all of my meditations, my thinking, my strategy, my business plan has been about what didn't I know at 26 that I now know at 40, so that I do not miss this opportunity. Because
this would be a good time for us to open up round A to invest in our Palantir agency, because we're going to be raising money and taking money into launch a business, because I think everything you just described, all your experiences, I always call it tuition. Everything you've paid in so far has gotten you to where you are today. And at some point, it really does become monetizable. So you can take out the big opportunities from all those experiences. Because how many uber successful people have had multiple experiences? I'll call them experiences, but failures. Because a failure is never really a failure unless you did something horribly wrong.
Yeah.
But if you make an effort, if you really try, and you have a really great idea and you try to execute on it, but it doesn't work, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It means the idea failed.
Yeah.
But you take all those experiences, and the amount of people that are uber successful today that had failures along the way, I would say almost every single one of them had failures along the way.
Yeah. So let me just bring it to jiu-jitsu for a second for all the jiu-jitsu listeners here. What I'm describing to you is the process of being a white belt to, earning your black belt one day. And when I was 26, I knew that jiu-jitsu was the thing, both metaphorically and literally in this story. In the case of my life, I started jiu-jitsu when I was 24. but went on to Shopify when I was 26. I knew to be there. I knew it was the place. I knew it was the platform. It's like being a white belt and knowing that jiu-jitsu works. I just couldn't quickly get my business black belt, even though I knew. Now, here we are all these years later, and I just very strongly feel more capable than I've ever been in my career to seize these opportunities and do them much, much, much faster than I had at the beginning of my career. I heard this awesome thing that from Scooter Braun. You know who Scooter Braun is?
The best, yeah. Very
Scooter Braun,
successful.
he's a big music guy. I don't follow him very closely. I'm not like a gigantic fan of his. I just heard him once say this somewhere, and it stuck with me. And he said that things at the beginning of his career, which took years or never, ideas, now he can do them in minutes because he knows exactly who to call. He knows exactly who to put together. If he finds an artist and wants it, he knows to how to just do the process and do it extremely fast. And like, that's what I found probably more than anything in my career now has changed from back then where I had the ideas and I knew they were good ideas to today where it's like, if I want to do it, I could do it insanely fast. I'll tell you one quick anecdote from this past Saturday when I was working the whole entire day in Palantir. I was able to do a very, very historically technical software integration. It's called an API integration between two systems. And this is something that up until about 6 months ago, I needed developers to do for me. So even as long as 6 months ago, this would have cost about $26,000. But in 2017, this exact same thing took 2 years and $350,000 of our company money. You'll remember it. I connected our ERP to Salesforce. 3 agencies, 2 years, $350,000. Over the years, we got better at it. But even 6 months ago, this was a $26,000 exercise, at least 6 to 8 weeks. Well, on Saturday, as a non-technical, non-developer CEO, I was able to do it myself in an hour.
Wow.
Hour. That's zero incremental cost to the business. That's just me busting my ass on a Saturday, putting in the work. And the fact that I don't need to go to a developer, I don't need to go to a consultant, that I'm able to do that work. Now, I would not be able to do that work without AI. So if you want to talk about the compounding effects of doing that every single day, what am I able to do in minutes or hours that previously took months or weeks, months, or years? Compound that across the whole economy.
When you told me this story, I said it reminds me of the Alpha School that you spoke about and you visited. And I don't know if everybody's familiar with it on your podcast, but the Alpha School, you can explain it better than I can. Yeah. But I said, if they're only spending 2 hours a day with AI learning on the core curriculum, and they have 6 hours to teach students everything else about life, about being better people, about becoming more skilled at something, whatever they choose to be, or a diversified collection of other things to do in their life, art, math, sports, climbing walls, whatever you do to become a better person, you'll have a lot more time. Yet they're getting better output in the 2 hours of education than they were getting in the 7 hours of education for students today.
Let me just give a
just like you. No, but I said that when you told me what you did, I said, Jordan, that's just like the Alpha School. You did it. You're living the Alpha School.
So the Alpha School is a chain of schools across the country, and they embrace something called the 2-hour learning system. It's an AI-driven learning platform with all different learning applications, and they teach children for 2 hours a day, and every child goes at their own pace until they learn 100% of the information. For the remaining hours of the day, they focus on what they call life skills. These are self-directed projects. These are engineering. These are robots. These are sports, all different types of things. And the 2-hour learning program is at the Alpha School, which is all over the country now, including in New York City and also Brownsville, Texas, where we do business. I'll talk about that in a second. And then they're also powering private schools. They're powering charter schools. They're powering sports academies, which is a huge part of where I think the future is going, which I'll also talk about in a second. And in Brownsville, Texas, where they piloted this, they created a subsidized version. So for $10,000, they get the same exact education as the person in Manhattan is getting for, at last I saw it was $65,000 a year. Brownsville, Texas is a place we've been doing business my whole entire career, more than 18 years, and you since 2005. And Brownsville, Texas, before SpaceX arrived and Elon Musk, was generally considered one of the poorest cities in the country, not because they didn't have a nice quality of life, but because the economy there, the cost of living was amongst the lowest in the whole country. It's at the southeasternmost point of Texas, at the point where Mexico meets the United States. And basically the only thing that Brownsville was in the national news for on a regular basis was illegal cross-border trafficking of humans and drugs and crime. But you and I have been doing business there this whole time, and we have built unbelievable relationships with great people who live down there. So there's an economy, there's business to be done, and there is a lot more than met the eye. But this happened to be the best possible location for Elon Musk to send rockets into space. And so he started to build his city, Starbase, there. And now today, just a few years later, after he started this experiment, he is building an entire city there in Brownsville, Texas, called Starbase. Their airport has changed. And when you and I landed, we saw a line of young engineers coming in from all corners of the world, lining up the rental car place to rent cars. Well,
Right.
Who's living in this new city now? Engineers and their families. And where are they sending their children? To the Alpha School. Half of the enrollment in Brownsville, Texas is SpaceX families. So what does it say about a school in a city like that, where half of its cohort are the children of some of the most talented people on planet Earth? It's crazy. And so like when I think about where I want my kids to learn, wouldn't you want your kids to learn at the same pace, using the same tools as the people who are sending rockets into space?
Well, I wanted to apply it to you and what you were doing over the weekend, in that you got something done that could have potentially taken months. You did it in 17 hours, you told me.
Yeah.
And
No. That specific thing was 1 hour.
1 hour. But you said you worked 17 straight hours on something else.
I did. That was a different project.
But my point was, look how much time you have to devote to the business now, because you don't have to spend the next 2 years working on the same project or whatever the time frame would have taken. So the productivity gains are going to be enormous. I'm really optimistic. When I sounded a little pessimistic before, when I started the conversation about what's going on in this fabulous place called New York City, or New York and California, a beautiful place, I sound a little depressing, but I'm really unbelievably optimistic about the future. And about, I think it's going to drive better jobs, quality of life, better productivity. And when people are more productive, they're much happier.
Yeah. Well, I talked about this on Jamie Giavazno's podcast, The Bro Show, which is coming out. So I'll be quoted here. And I also talked about it there for some time. But as it relates back to sports academies, there are these sports academies cropping up all over the country now. They've always been here, but now they're becoming more and more popular. Think like IMG Academy and these elite athletic institutions that are producing these athletes from the time they're kids. And I suspect you're going to start to see these in every major city, towns, and they're going to be sports specific, so that if you want to focus in on jiu-jitsu, that there will very likely be a full-time private jiu-jitsu academy or martial arts academy where you could learn for 2 hours a day and then study your craft and sport. And I believe very strongly that this is going to be a central part of the new economy. People keep asking, and I think it's crazy that they keep asking this, but I guess they just had a limited understanding of history. What are all these people going to do if they can't work at Amazon? I'm sure you saw Bernie Sanders yesterday riling Amazon for laying off workers. And, you know, what people are going to do is they're going to adapt to the new economy. And
Bernie didn't read Atlas Shrugged, apparently.
But if you think about jiu-jitsu as just a metaphor, when I began training jiu-jitsu in 2009, okay, almost 17 years ago, there were very few jiu-jitsu academies on Long Island. There was a handful, but there were few. Today, there are multiple jiu-jitsu academies in every town on Long Island, okay? And I'm not talking about just a little, a lot. Every single place I travel in the world, I can train jiu-jitsu, and I have. Whenever we go to Mykonos as a family, or Puerto Rico as a family, or Texas, or on a business trip, I bring my gear, and there is jiu-jitsu everywhere. You just mentioned one of our properties in Lincolnton, North Carolina, where we helped build a jiu-jitsu academy. Shout out Saga Combat. And if you think about in that short 15-year window, approximately, how many thousands and thousands now.
Didn't you just get one in Pennsylvania also? And didn't you get
We got a martial arts academy. It wasn't jiu-jitsu,
right.
But yes, we put in a martial arts academy, Kung Fu. But if you think about, so now extrapolate that across CrossFit and High Rocks and spin studios. And then you think about children, flag football, grit. These ninja warrior places are popping up all over the place. This is a whole entire new economy around fitness that people love. People don't want to work and sit behind a desk. They want to be doing exercise all day. And there's
it's not that. It's not only that. It's everything you believe in. It's a discipline that translates so well from training and jiu-jitsu into business.
Mm-hmm.
You're building business warriors. You're building doctor warriors. You're building social worker warriors by training their body and their minds. So when they come out, they take those same skills and they apply them to where they want to be in their lives. And that's why it's so important that this Alpha Academy is not drilling down or wasting 6 hours a day on extending the education so you have a complete day. They're packing in a lot of great education quickly, getting quantifiable results because you can't move on until you've learned everything. And then they're teaching you the life skills to make you a successful, healthy, competitive person when you get out in whatever you choose to do. I'm really optimistic, like I said.
Oh, I'm really optimistic. I think it's going to be a very, very exciting future. I wrote an article last year about how I think the future is going to be amazing. I should update that with some of my new thinking. But I've been so surprised over the past couple of months, the sheer volume and quality of the work that I've been able to produce across everything that I do. And it's become so much more fun. It's when you struggle and you struggle and you struggle.
It's a competitive advantage early, but as you and I always say, everyone else is going to catch up.
Yes.
Everybody will catch up. That's a good thing. Everybody, if they're on the same page, and then you just what I always say, outwork somebody else. You could always outwork someone, but you're not going to be able to outlearn them because I think everybody's going to be learning exactly what you're learning right now.
Absolutely. It's going to be completely democratizing technology where levels the playing field. And it just, another thing that I've been thinking a lot about, which I think you'd find very interesting because it's directly from your philosophy that you've taught me about sales driving the business, is that now that I can do so many aspects of our business so well and across things that I needed professionals for, it makes you really have to focus your time and energy on the things that grow the business, on the sales, on customer acquisition, on collecting rent. When you could fool yourself into thinking you're working hard with busy work,
right?
And AI makes busy work feel really good because you could do it so well. And so, for example, writing reports. When I began my career working for you and I began writing investor reports, I agonized over these reports. I agonized over every detail, every spelling mistake. It caused me so much stress to think that the numbers I was reporting were incorrect. It was a really difficult thing that took weeks and months, not because it was so unbelievably difficult, but it really, the stress associated, and people still to this day who consolidate reporting, they talk about this. My mother-in-law, for example, she works for a publicly traded company. I'm not going to say which one. And she's a part of the executive process of creating reporting. And it's just a stressful thing to have to work on the reporting cycle where the biggest decisions are being made. Well, another implementation of my Palantir usage this past quarter for our quarterly and executive reviews. We have approximately 30 senior managers and executives who get reviewed 4 times a year. And each one of those reviews is 45 minutes. And it took 3 executives and myself days and days and days to consolidate and prepare all the reporting, going into all the systems, downloading into Excel, formatting everything, making sure it's accurate, creating the narrative of what to say. And then we would have these marathon days where we go over their business with them. And guess how long it took me to produce 100% of the management and executive reporting inside of Palantir?
I know you told me it's an hour to do everybody's
It
reports.
wasn't an hour. It was 45 seconds.
45 seconds. Oh my God.
45 seconds from prompt of what I didn't even need to prompt it. I uploaded the raw data and I asked it, what do you think about this data? And it was able to immediately read all of the data, look at all the formulas, look at the names. It knows everybody's names, and it knew I was doing quarterly reporting. So then it just used the power of the LLM, and it instantaneously suggested and produced all of the reports. This was over 200 hours a year of executive reporting time in 45 seconds.
Yeah, we are going through something that's massive and a game changer. And like I said, to almost everybody I've been speaking to now, because clearly I'm just listening to you, but I'm telling them, if you don't adjust and change rapidly and radically, you're going to be left behind. And that's why this new business we're starting is going to be a game changer for a lot of companies. We're going to be both a friend, and what we really should be is a partner to all these companies that we're going to help, as opposed to just a vendor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's spinning up as an advisory. Certainly to start, we're going to be doing a lot of development work for, hopefully bringing a lot of our portfolio companies and friend companies and people in our orbit. But I just put one post up on LinkedIn when I won that boot camp a couple months ago. And just the number of CEOs and friends who run businesses of all kinds reaching out to me, wanting to, because everyone's trying to answer the same question. They're all trying to answer the question is, how do you embrace AI? And there's so many competing narratives of how to do it. Where do you put your chips? And what I've advised them, and what I'm going to make as a part of our advisory of what I've done many times in our business now, is just go to the best. Like if you sell clothes and you go to a local guy because you're trying to save a couple bucks, they're going to pitch you the equivalent of a Nokia or a Samsung phone. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a Motorola. But if you know that the iPhone exists, just go get an iPhone. You know what I mean? Like if you want to make your life easier, if you want to be avant-garde and you want to be like, stand out, okay, fine. But if you just want to be in the business of whatever you're in the business in, just go to the best. That's how I ended up with Shopify. That's how I ended up with Salesforce. And that's how I ended up with Palantir. I knew there were other AI companies, but Palantir was the best. And when I found out that they were looking for people like me, I couldn't believe it. And then, we got each other.
Yeah. So very, very excited for the future. Very excited to be part of it. I'm always learning, and most of my learning comes through you, which is just great. Thank you.
Well, we've codified the Glenn Edwards business philosophy at this point, which is pretty cool. And now we try to filter all of our business decisions. Maybe we can end today on that subject. This year especially put our economy and our companies to the test. 2025 was brutal in so many ways. And I would say if one thing kept us together more than any of the other things, it was a strict adherence to our core values, which drive the business, to make sure that we do things the right way, the ethical way, the legal way. And you don't know how important those things are until the house is on fire. And you got to make sure that the fire suppression system is working, metaphorically and actually. And so I think like the fire suppression system in business and life is your values. And, you and I've talked about often that if you don't pay your bills, then when problems do arise, and they absolutely will arise, your vendors are not going to have your back, and your people are not going to have your back, and they're not going to stand up to protect you and defend you, which you need them to do. So where do you stand today? Maybe the same or different than you always have in terms of like how your values fit into the next AI generation?
Well, I'm spending time trying to help a new business get seeded and spending time with them. And I think the business has tremendous potential. But when I spoke to the young leadership team yesterday over there, I said, nothing has changed in terms of core values in business, about treating people well, about bringing on good people and having honor and having them be honorable, letting them learn from you and how you do things. So a lot of things haven't changed. Just the machinery to get things done is a lot better now than it was when I started my career. And it was a lot better than it was 3 or 4 years ago, as you just described, the 200-hour process versus 45 seconds. So you can embrace change, and you should embrace change. However, the core values must stay the same. And if you read the book 1929, you'll see how bad the bankers were and why we had a huge stock market crash. Because there were very few people that were really jimmying the system, and then it crashed because of that. So I think if you do the right things, a lot of those businesses, many of those businesses are still around, but a lot of them are gone because they just broke the rules. They didn't do the right thing by people.
Yeah. I heard Andrew Ross Sorkin, the author of that book and the famous broadcaster on CNBC, and also the writer and producer of the show Succession and Billions, right?
He had Billions, and he also wrote Too Big to Fail.
Too Big to Fail, right. So I heard him on the All In podcast talking about the book, and he was talking about how much has been preserved from that time, journals, correspondence, letters, and he was able to do deep research to find out how people were thinking at the time. I thought that was really interesting.
He spent 5 years researching this book, and the book is a collection of excerpts from board meetings, from Senate hearings, from the Federal Reserve minutes of the time, and all the decisions that were made during that period. And some of them are stories that were told about certain people, but most of it is a recollection or from his research, and then just written as a book. But it's not written. It's not fiction. It's nonfiction. This is what really happened. And most people have seen something about the Great Depression, about the stock market crash, movie, books, whatever. But this is really a good history lesson.
Yeah, I got to pick that up. Well, love you. Thanks for coming on again. I got to get you on again soon. I'll probably hit you in another couple of months to get back on because I enjoy it so much. All right. Love you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody.